Greetings everyone, and welcome back to Mini Painting Memoirs. Last episode, we got started painting Gub Gub the Hill Giant, so I could get back into the process of painting models. It went fairly well, minus a few parts which were still a little thin, but today we're going to be fixing those areas, along with getting most of the flats or base layers completed. So my first task was to paint over the shoulder with the testing light tones that I did on it. It's a simple fix and probably the easiest task I'm going to be doing today, as next was to paint his makeshift trousers in Carcharodon Grey? Something along those lines, I can't read half these names. The paint itself isn't the issue, but the surface is a very uneven one with a lot of texture and creases which could result in some unwanted pooling. However, I am sure to reduce the thickness of the paint with a bit of water and to carefully even out the paint as much as I can to try and prevent this. Areas like the underside of the trousers I wasn't as precious with, not just because it was smoother in comparison, but the areas will be covered in a darker tone in the future, so it doesn't really matter how the quality of the paint looks on that side of it. All things considered, I think I did the trousers fairly well. Obviously the paint got into areas that I don't want to be grey, like the belt straps and the patches. However, I will be going over those in later stages and wanted the biggest colour area down first, though part of me was curious if it would be easier to do the smaller details first and then correct any spillover when it came to doing the bigger colour area. But that was for another time. And that time was now, as I will test if my suspicion is correct by using Army Paint's Pure Red to paint the patch on the back of his bag and the one on top in Royal Blue, also under Army Paints. While waiting for those to dry, I move on to the wraps on his feet using two thin coats of Vampire Fang, and I think this will help highlight any dirt details I add to them later on. The wraps are a smaller area with cramped folds that make this part tricky to do, but as I am still in the base layering stage, getting some paint where it shouldn't be isn't a big worry right now. Once they were done, I used a dry brush to add some more detail to the mud Gub Gub is standing on to make the highest parts just a little bit more lighter. Then it was back to the bag, and using Game Color Tierra Earth, I began to paint the biggest surface on his bag. I did try and cheat a little bit by watering it a bit more than usual to make it pool in the spaces where the net is on his bag, while a thinner layer would paint the rope on the net to give it a slightly different colour. This didn't work out so well, but it was worth a try to see if I can make what would be a difficult area easier later on. But at least the bag is done, mostly done, and correcting the red and blue spillage was very easy when I saved the bigger area for last. So far I think Gub Gub is coming along quite well. For the most part the paint is neat enough and the colours I have chosen are helping him look more like a boss character than a generic hill giant. Now for a smaller but less detailed surface. Citadel Administratum Grey is the starting point for the stones on the ground and on his club. Filling them out a bit more than usual as well because I wanted the bone white underneath to still come through to give an uneven, more natural looking texture of the varying greys. It was a simple and quick job that turned out fine, I guess. Now let's put some colour into that hair, and I'll be keeping it simple again with TTC Doom Death Black. Now black is a risky colour to work with. Ask anyone who paints, in general, and they will tell you that black is a very dominating tone. Even just a small amount of it can darken a colour when mixing it way past what you are hoping for. When it comes to mini painting, there's also a chance that any black that spills over onto a surface you don't want may be harder to hide under a correction layer, but this depends on the quality of the paint as well as how thick you make the correction layer. In my case, however, because of what I am aiming for in a completed look, this may not be a big issue, as I can disguise it later as comic book style cross-hatching or details like a lip highlight. To finish up this session, I painted the patches on his trousers and found this harder to keep neat, so I think for me personally, doing some of the smaller details first will be the better thing to tackle before adding colour to the larger areas. Then just the last few things to paint. The tree that makes up his club is painted with a mixture of Army Painter Pure Red and TTC Kronos Flesh. Then I thinned out some excess Kronos Flesh and used it to stain his foot wraps and stones in the mud, which I think turned out very nicely. Finished for the day, I waited for him to dry, packed up, and then headed home. Once again, thank you to Red Wizard for allowing me to use their shop to record this footage. The next morning, however, I was met with a happy accident. I'm not certain what did it, but Gub Gob had gotten scuffed and some of the paint had been scraped off his bag mostly. But honestly, the ones on his bag I kind of like. It adds some wear and tear to the detail of it. When it comes to shading in the model, I may need to try and reapply this in some fashion, but that is for future Zach to worry about. In the next episode, I will be trying to finish off some more base layering on the smaller details like the rope and stitches and potentially the fingernails, then diving into the first round of dark tone, and I hope to see you there. If you have watched this far, thanks for watching, and as always, much love and appreciation to all those who do. If you want to see more content like this, as well as TTRPG tutorials and advice, then please consider subscribing and possibly joining our Discord community where you can meet more nerds like us who are made up of players, GMs, and artists and other like-minded individuals. It also helps us out because it helps the channel grow and reach more people to spread more happiness in a world that really needs it. Thanks again everyone, and always remember to keep on rolling.